welcome back to Stories from the River. We are live on location from the Purpose Summit, the NASCAR Hall of Fame gear shop, and I'm here with Ron Carucci. Ron, welcome to the pod.
Charlie, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, this is your 551st podcast interview, correct?
If we're counting, yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, hey, if you want to make the days count, count the days.
Welcome to Stories from the River, a show in which we go behind the scenes at Broad River Retail.
Ron, tell us a little bit about, like, this is your third Purpose Summit, and this is your second one to speak at?
Yeah.
Okay, tell us a little bit about, like, why did you attend the first time? How did you get to become a speaker? And a little bit about your own origin story.
Yeah, Richard Sheridan is a mutual friend of Devin and mine, and I've known Richard for a while. Chief Joy Officer. And I profiled Rich in a book of 2 books ago, and fell in love with his story. And we met online, and then as it turned out, I sent him a book when we first started, didn't get an answer back because he's busy, but then I actually connected with him again online, and we actually had a meeting and spoke. And I went to Michigan to visit with him because I was so enamored with him, and then I saw he was speaking at the Purpose Summit. I said, oh, I got to come see you speak. He wrote Davin and said, you got to have Ron on your stage. Well, all the slots were taken, but I met with Davin, and he said, just come and see what we're doing. I said, okay. So I came out and hung out and loved what they were doing. Mm-hmm. Got to meet Rich, and then met Gary. Gary and I were already part of the same community, but we hadn't met that much. And so met some great friends and thought, I'll keep doing. And I so sort of helped Gavin figure out what to do next and how to think about it. Next year, got invited to speak this year. And then this year he said, come back and do an encore if you don't do the same material.
Did you do the same material? I was there 2 years ago, but we sent 12 people 2 years ago, and I picked up a copy of your book, I believe 2 years ago, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And I also saw Rich speak 2 years ago. And then last year we sent 6 people to that, so they would have heard you speak. And so what did you speak about last year, and what did you speak about this year?
So last year I spoke about the To Be Honest, with the research and the findings and how to create environments that produce honest people. And this year was a brand new material, so this was the place where we debuted it, bumps and all.
The origin stories. Yep. Is that your upcoming book?
It might be. We're chatting. Scott Miller and I are. Scott's bullish on this. Okay. Scott called me right before I went on stage this morning with some beautiful words of encouragement and reminding me that we're doing this book.
That's awesome. How many books have you written?
10.
10 books. Okay. Is this what you do full time? You also have Navalent?
Navalent's my consulting firm. That's my full-time job. So we're going to celebrate our 28th birthday this year.
Oh, congratulations.
It's a big deal. I started when I was 11.
Yeah.
So we spend our days working alongside leaders like you, leaders of leading big enterprises, who are in the midst of really messy transformational changes, either within themselves or within their organizations or their marketplaces, and help them navigate that transformation. So we do org design work, we do strategy work, and we do leadership work.
Did you write any of the books prior to starting Navalent?
Some of them were prior to Navalent. Okay. So
what did you do prior to Navalent, and like, where are you from?
Same work. Okay. So my career's always been in organization development or psychology. Okay. I spent a number of years doing that work inside companies. Mm-hmm. And then I started to collect severance packages. And my kids were like, oh, cool, more time with dad. It wasn't fun for me. And so in between my severance packages, I would consult. Okay. And by the third time, I started to realize, oh, hey, the same behavior that seems to get me in trouble inside companies gets me paid a lot of money outside companies. So if I'm going to have to live out my passion for organizations, it's going to have to be by not being part of one. Okay. So diplomacy was a late developed gift for me. And so I thought my job was to help people get better and tell the truth about what wasn't working. And turns out some leaders didn't really want to hear that. Yeah.
So you talked about a couple different stories, like the story of Andy this morning. And so go into a little bit of your message this morning and what you talked about.
I think all of us all have moments that are universal where we say to ourselves, why did I do that? We all have patternistic behaviors, choices we make that frustrate us and frustrate other people too. And we tend to sort of dismiss the repetitive, I can't believe I did that again. But until there's a catastrophic consequence of that choice, you lose a job, you lose a marriage, you lose friendships. If you're just irritating people or frustrated with yourself, people don't tend to want to be motivated to change behavior, or they assume this is just who I am, or this is who I'm sentenced to be. And they don't ever dig deeper to say, maybe there actually is an answer to the question. Maybe there's a reason I behave this way, and maybe I have a choice. the world is plastered with self-help techniques, with books jumping off shelves for the 6 secrets to self-control and the 5 secrets to happiness and the 8 steps to pick it. And we want to reduce life to a formula, like a souffle. If you're careful, it won't fall in. That's not quite how life works. And so it turns out, with all the knowledge we have of neuroscience today, of how our brains work, of how our bodies store memories, turns out that most of us, when we return to patternistic behavior that's not productive or that's destructive, we're returning to the scene of a crime. We're actually returning to a story that's formative years that our body's trying to resolve. Our body continues to bring us back to the place because it wants to settle the score, and whatever that undigested life experience was, to finally digest it and move on. And so our body is brilliantly designed to keep looking for the way to do that, even though it's not going to work, because I don't even know it's doing that. Our bodies will often reflexively react in situations. I was triggered. Well, maybe you were, but you have to ask yourself why. And most of us don't take the next couple of steps to think, I should actually be more curious about this, rather than being frustrated and shaming myself, going, I'm such a jerk, why do I do that? To say, maybe I learned that in some way, and maybe I could unlearn it.
To get to this level of self-awareness, do you have to have some sort of rock bottom trauma or something to be the catalyst to kind of make you go do that dig? That
often happens. I don't think we have to wait that long. I think we can actually be curious to start with. It takes courage to face into stories that sometimes...
Hence my shirt.
Yeah, thank you. And sometimes it takes help, right? It's to have a wise guide along for the ride can be useful. But I think you have to be curious enough and courageous enough to say, I don't want this for myself. I don't want this for the people that I love. I don't want this for the people that I lead. I want to do better. And with the best of intentions, we try and go technique our way out of it, and paper over with breathing techniques or mind management techniques or interpersonal skills, which are all great to have. But if you're sitting there on top of a swamp of moldy, stories, eventually it's going to simmer.
I'm getting the visual of moldy stories in the swamp there. Yeah.
Stuff, right?
How did you come to realize this? How did you learn all this?
Well, some of it was in my own therapist helping me recognize and connect dots between things that I was choosing and stories that happened to me, a long time ago. And recognizing that I think there are all of us are walking around with stories hanging off of us that we don't realize are haunting us, right? And maybe aren't aware of the unconscious way they're helping us navigate the world. We all know, we know enough about unconscious bias and how I'm going to look at you and see beard, see short haircut, see black t-shirt, and go gang member, or.
Let's hope not. I'm the furthest from a gang member. But
I'm going to see a story.
Yeah.
Whenever I teach leadership and teach about bias, I'll put a bunch of pictures on the wall, just random pictures of people, clip art, and I'll say, what's happening in this picture? And they can tell me a story. And they don't realize that the story is not in the picture. The story's inside you. Yeah, and so that interpretation is important. It's telling you that you're navigating the world and navigating scenes that look like that in a certain way. Maybe you're accurate, maybe you're not. But are you even aware of what the navigational equipment is? And is it the navigational equipment you chose? Or is it the navigational equipment you inherited?
And how do you connect this to purpose?
Well, I think if you want to live a life of meaning, you have to live a life that's honest. And those stories are causing us to live lies. We're not living true to who we are. We're living true to a narrative that got imposed on us or that we imposed on ourselves. Well, by definition, you're duplicitous, right? You're saying one thing and doing another.
Yeah.
And
you're not authentic.
And so how can you say you're living an authentic purpose when you don't even know who you are?
In the work you do at Navalent, how long of a process does someone engage with Navalent? And I assume they've got to come to you to say, hey, I'm ready, I need some help, and this sort of thing.
Leaders often call us when they're in pain, especially CEOs or executives who their company's in a ditch or market headwinds hit and they're competitively not, there's some painful symptom. And so we've had clients for 12, 15 years. And we do different things for them. I'm not doing the same work, but some years we'll work on shaping the enterprise for them. Some years we'll work on cultivating a pipeline of leaders. Some years we'll work on individuals. Some years we'll work on culture. But clients stay with us for a long time.
Okay. And you take them through this process of in self-discovery, interrogative questions. You had some rhetorical questions. You had people, you asked things like, what's the lie you've been telling yourself that you've never interrogated? When does it show up? What say-do gaps does it create? You told the story of Andy, of Derek, and so really powerful stuff. Do you get to see that light bulb go off for people?
We sure do. And data is our friend. So, we'll begin, like we did with Derek and Andy, with a set of really forensic interviews, really comprehensive. And we extract a lot of data and we code all of it. And so what I'm going to put back in front of you is a 30 or 40 or 50 page mirror. And you're going to hear everything I heard. You're going to be forced to listen to voices you've sent out of the room. You won't know who said it because it's coded around patterns. Charlie tends to be, but sometimes he, and in each of the sections are going to see 5 or 10 comments supporting that theme. And so you're going to hear everybody's collective views of you, good and bad otherwise, and of the enterprise, and of the culture, and of leadership there, and of their confusion over the strategy. I can't tell you how many executive teams I sit around the table with, and I'll ask individuals, so what are the top priorities for the next 2 years? Where are we headed? How are we competing? What's our differentiators? I can get as many different answers as there are people on the team.
It's like a 360, like on steroids.
On steroids, exactly what it is. But now, armed with that much insight and data, we have a lot of choices now. And so together we'll decide, well, we can't work on it all.
Yeah.
Where do we want to start?
Okay. And you had an uplifting ending, a message you wanted people to take away from at the end of your talk about the story that you want them to believe, so and the worth that they have and what's true. So take us home with that.
I think we all settle for reenactment. We keep returning to the scene of crimes, returning to recurring behaviors, and I think our stories are made for more than reenactment. I think our stories are made for redemption. The next chapter of the story, including the 50-page one I hand to my clients, the pen is in your hand. You get to decide what the next chapter is, but you have to be honest about the chapter you're in.
It's interesting to hear all the speakers kind of talk. We had Gary Ridge, and he's talked about the choice is yours. We had Nick Craig, and he talked about going back, interrogating, going back to some of those moments earlier in your life. Similar threads here, and I love the psychology work that you've done here with real data and the 360 on steroids. I can see the merits of that, and I'm sure you've had a lot of great success stories, and you shared a couple of those as well earlier today. So hopefully you'll be back next year at the Purpose Summit. And any final words? How can someone connect with you? And any final words?
Find me on LinkedIn. Find me on Navalent, NAVALENT.com. If you want to learn more about the book, we actually, when we created To Be Honest, we did interviews of all. So To Be Honest is a book of heroes. It's a book of the people you'd want to as your boss. And so we did all the interviews of those for the book. And all the footage, we turned it into a really cool TV series.
Oh, really cool.
So there's a news magazine show called Moments of Truth. And if you go to tobehonest.net, you can binge watch all 15 episodes and meet some really cool heroes and leaders.
Tobehonest.net, and you can watch 15 episodes of Moments of Truth. That's fantastic. And the new book's coming out hopefully next year?
Well, no.
Okay. Soon.
One day.
We're gonna send this to Scott Miller. And so Ron, thanks so much for being here for your 551st podcast episode, and we're to grace us with your presence here on Stories from the River, and we'll see you hopefully next year at the Purpose Summit. So thanks so much for joining us here live on location from the Purpose Summit with Ron Carucci.
Thanks for listening to Stories from the River. To check out more episodes, visit storiesfromtheriver.com. Join us again next week, and remember to like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast.